Thank Yes, thank you so much, first of all, Ranjini, for a small introduction about my bio. So, first of all, I would like to thank Department of Economics, St. Thomas College, Ranni, Kerala, and I seriously thankful to the principal, Dr. Eliama ma'am, and Professor Benny George sir, and Dr. Abraham sir, Dr. Sajini ma'am, and especially Ranjini, my friend. So for inviting me, giving me this opportunity to address the students from economics background. And here I would like to extremely grateful by having around 200 plus students, and I would make sure that your 50 minutes, next 50 to 60 minutes would be very fruitful, because I know that there are flood of webinars all over the country, so there's too much supply. But what I would like to say here is I will try to make your 50 minutes very fruitful, especially from the perspective of monetary and fiscal policy. So Ranjini, shall I? I think on YouTube also people can listen to me. Okay. Thank you. So the topic, as we have seen, that coronavirus is a problem, and it's a very big problem. Since Great Depression days, 1930s, we have not faced situation like this, where production cut down, demand went down, and everything is in chaos, and policymakers are like finding it very difficult to answer the queries posed by coronavirus. The most important thing you need to understand is not from the factual perspective, not from the perspective of the content, because here we'll not talk about the problems that has been there, because everyone knows the problem. Now here the next 30 minutes what we will discuss is the monetary and fiscal policy separately, and in the later half, maybe 25% of my lecture, I will give you the combination of monetary and fiscal policy, which is very important in order to have a counter policy towards coronavirus. So here, if we think about monetary and fiscal policy, first we think about the monetary policy, because RBI and the government has been aggressively using monetary policy in order to counter the COVID economic slowdown. Now this slowdown is not very new to Indian economy. Like if you can imagine a simple graph of economics, on both the axis economy was going like that, but after demonetization it went down just because of the liquidity crunch in the economy. What happened after demonetization and implementation of GST? Although GST is not bad, but here the issue is the implementation of GST created certain kind of disruption in the economy, because it is a new tax regime. So everyone has taken some time to shift from the old regime to the new one. So economy was little bit going downwards. But what happened just at the around February, March, what happened? The nosedive the economy. So what we call the term recession. Although there are different terms, we are currently not in depression because there are different types of term: recession, slowdown, depression, etc. So previously we were facing slowdown, it means the decline in the GDP growth rate. Recession means the negative growth rate for the successive 2 quarters. Although we do not experience, or we did not experience till now, that we have the negative growth rate. But here in India, what happened is RBI is using monetary policy extensively to control the economic slowdown. Before starting this topic, what I would like to express all of you that RBI's monetary policy controls credit and money in the economy. So their hands are limited, very limited. Not just RBI, all over the world, central bank has been doing the same thing. If you have read about the concepts of liquidity trap, and because monetary policy has certain kind of limitations, like for example, if RBI will reduce the rate, what will happen? Banks will follow. Now there is no compulsion on the banks to follow this. It means banks may follow, may not follow according to their, but there is a certain formula that we have to implement. So generally banks do follow. But what happened after that? People has to take loans at the low interest rate. So what RBI has been doing, the problem during the coronavirus, or the problem posed by coronavirus, was not just the demand side problem, okay? Because when we have demand side problem, then RBI's monetary policy can control that scenario. But here the problem started just after coronavirus. Countries started doing or adopting the policies of lockdown. What happened in lockdown? Because you know that we are living in a globalization age and world is totally integrated. So the first impact was on the basis of, first impact happened due to COVID, just because global supply chain disruption. It means the amount of manufacturing, like China we can consider as a manufacturing hub or the manufacturing factory of the world. So global supply chain disrupted. It means supply is not smooth. Now when supply is not smooth, if you have demand also, then you will not able to match that demand and supply. Again, the question comes to basic economics, that is demand and supply. So you have demand, but you do not have supply at the immediate place. Although basic necessities or basic food items were available, but I'm talking about other things because that generate aggregate demand into the economy. What happened after that? After disruption, RBI started decreasing the interest rate. Now, the question is, banks are also decreasing the interest rate on the loans, but here there are no people to buy or to borrow that money, because no one was buying house, no one was buying car or any other loan like education loan to study abroad. So there was no point in gaining or getting loan. Okay, the people were struggling with their pay cuts and other things, struggling to go to their workplace and other working from home. So everything has changed, especially in the teaching, where senior professors find it difficult to use technology suddenly overnight, and it was like a kind of disruption that created all over the world. Now here issue is the monetary policy limitation. So that is why we can put aside monetary policy, that monetary policy at a point of time is good when we have demand side problem. But when we have supply side problem, like supply disruption, global supply disruption in the supply chain disruption. So here the issue is, then monetary policy is not effective, because here the supply is not reaching to the destination or to the consumer. Like apart from e-commerce, you can imagine that in the month of April, May, and most probably half of June as well, some of the states are having lockdown. So gradually they were opening up. So for the 2.5 months, except for e-commerce, every other sector struggled, especially in the manufacturing and the supply chain. So there is a limitation of monetary policy. Now what RBI has been doing is RBI extensively using cheap money policy, what we call decreasing the interest rate. Now in the last monetary policy committee, you know that we have monetary policy committee, which is a legal framework. Here RBI governors cannot directly intervene. They have legal framework of 6 people, so they have to take the decision in tandem. But what happened after that, that if you think RBI is decreasing the interest rate again and again, in the last monetary policy committee meeting, they were not able to decrease the interest rate. So you can see that they have reached a limit from where they cannot decrease the interest rate. So that is, we can say, the dead end meet by monetary policy. Now coming on to the fiscal policy, which is more relevant in this. If you remember the problems of Great Depression, problems of global financial crisis of 2008, problems of Asian financial crisis, or problems of OPEC crisis 1974, all these crises have simple one solution. One solution is when private sector, when the market doesn't work well. Because here, for example, when there is no demand, private sector will not come into the picture, because they will not see the incentive. So whenever they do not see the incentive, because private sector does not work for welfare, so who will come? According to the Keynesian economics, the basic is that government has to intervene in the market. Now, if government has to intervene in the market, what does it mean? That government is having one policy, one tool. Okay, that tool is fiscal policy. So the fiscal policy, if you have that tool, the most important thing is fiscal policy consists of what kind of tools? Like fiscal policy consists of three things. Generally in books, you will find that there are only two things written. But here, I think someone has started presenting. Yeah, sorry. So the important thing here is that fiscal policy is having three important things. Three important things means government revenue, government expenditure, and at last, the third most important thing is government borrowing. When we have the power of borrowing, this is where that government can take place or take the initiatives to counter the problems raised by coronavirus or COVID slowdown. Here, first of all, we'll analyze the government revenue. Now, you know, when economic activities are not taking place, what will happen? Economic activities are not taking place, government will not get revenue because people are not buying things, so they will not get GST amount because like goods and services are not selling. Apart from this, if you think about other taxes like income tax, which is a regular phenomena, but that comes in a year. And income tax, the amount, corporate income tax, other things comes during the later period like September, October. This is the time where government collects income tax of the previous financial year. So you can imagine that in March and April, government was struggling with low receipts of GST as well as like very minimal receipts of the direct taxes, which is generally major consist of corporate income tax and the individual's income tax. Here the question comes from revenue to expenditure. Now this is the point. Why? Because if people are not having money in their hands, what is the role of the government? The role of the government is very simple, to provide money into the hands of the people. Now there are two options. One, what government can do? Government can reduce the tax rate, but by reducing the tax rate, it doesn't matter because there's no demand in the economy because of global supply chain disruption. The issue is here that the only thing remain is government expenditure, where government can spend in the economy aggressively. Now spending aggressively doesn't mean that government will increase the expenditure without any planning, or here you know that one of the famous quote of Keynes that in the long run we are all dead. It means this is a problem where we cannot think about 2021. We have to think about tomorrow or a week after or 15 days. That's it. Like if you observe the trend, I was attending a lecture and I was giving a speech there. What I said in one of the lecture that if you see the trend of coronavirus and the government policy, government can only predict up to 15 days. So 15 days from that date. If you see in April, March, government has been taking decision regarding 15 days, extending the lockdown to 15-20 days. That's it. Because the horizon became very, very narrow, so government cannot think about future. Now here the question arises, what government can do in the short run? We cannot build hospitals. What we can do, we can supply extra masks, sanitizer, PPE kits. These are the short-term solution. Building hospitals is a long-term. Arranging or some arrangements to do for the isolation or quarantine facility, that is possible. So government has been doing in Delhi, if you see, I personally saw that they are temporarily making the isolation beds in the tents and other things. So that has been very appreciable. Apart from this, if you think about government expenditure, one of the biggest project is Atmanirbhar Bharat. Atmanirbhar Bharat consists of around 2 lakh crore package, as I told you, or 20 trillion rupees. So it's approximately 10% of the GDP. When government announced Atmanirbhar Bharat package under that around 60% contributed by government and 40% contributed by Reserve Bank of India. But here the question arises that Atmanirbhar Bharat is having huge amount of money. How it will impact in the short run? Like for example, government announced the allocation of 50,000 crore rupees for Garib Kalyan Yojana. That will also support the migrant workers. Although on the ground level we do not have any data to substantiate that statement, but still from the expenditure side, from the perspective of economists, we can think that Atmanirbhar Bharat is having more like expansionary fiscal policy that supported COVID-19 economic recovery. Now apart from this, if you think about the Atmanirbhar Bharat package, in Atmanirbhar Bharat package approximately 10% of GDP, as I said earlier. Now before announcing this Atmanirbhar package, Japan was having around 15% of GDP fiscal stimulus. Other countries, Singapore around 12.5%. Other countries like South Korea, if we compare East Asian market, because we cannot compare India with a developed country. So here they all have, or they all had 10%, more than 10%. So being a large country with a lot of migrant worker problem, with a lot of poverty all over the country, although the figures are very low, if you see Tendulkar committee or Rangarajan committee, figures are like 21.9% or 29.5% respectively. But here the question is that poverty in reality is way beyond that, and due to migration, a lot of people are working like daily wage workers. So here the problem is about creating employment, giving employment, because those who are living on a daily wage, they cannot sustain for 2.5 months without any work. I hope you are getting my point. Now here, what is the important issue, that how we can create jobs? So what government did, that is the connection of the concepts. Manrega, extra funding to Manrega, extra funding of 40,000 crore. So it was 60 plus 40, so almost 1 lakh crore of Manrega fund they have allotted. So that created rural demand. Now another issue, if we think about real estate sector, in real estate sector we have workers working from some other places, like in Kerala also we have a lot of migrants working in Middle East, so they also came to Kerala. In all over the India, a lot of people working in Maharashtra in the construction sector. What happened? Due to migration, they went back to the home. So again, real estate went down, construction went down, although government has allowed, but still it is not going. Now the issue is, all people will go to rural areas, and in rural areas there is no demand for the work. So again the Manrega comes into the picture, and that is a great initiative, what we can say fiscal stimulus or pump priming, what Keynes said in his book of the general theory of employment, interest and money. So I hope you understand the linkages and the usefulness of the policies, two policies, fiscal policy and monetary policy. Now here what we were discussing till this point is differently. Monetary policy is different and fiscal policy is different. Now is the time that where we can integrate these two, because these two are controlled by government only. Like government controls RBI also, because RBI is the, what we can say, the sole authority control of RBI is Government of India, although it is working autonomously under government. But we can say that government, if government can say something, RBI has to follow, because government is having 100% share of RBI. So here the issue is that if we integrate both these policy, they should go hand in hand. Like I'll give you a simple example. If you think how monetary policy and fiscal policy should be in tandem, that is very important. Here if we think about the issue of European Union, in European Union we have 28 countries, okay, still United Kingdom if we calculate, if we count. Now the question arises, they have Euro area, Eurozone, which is what we call 19 countries. Those countries uses Euro as their currency. Now Euro is a single currency. It means you have a single bank, central bank, that is European Central Bank. But here the condition is that all the countries are having different economic system, especially their strength to like take care of the disruptions created by COVID. But problem is that all countries are having different fiscal policy. European Central Bank announced one repo rate, one interest rate. But here the condition of fiscal or the finances in Greece is very different from Germany. Germany and France are two strongest country. Like we can understand that France is a father, so Germany is like a grandfather of the European Union. Those who are continuing this concepts, because in 2011 it was looking like the end of the European Union, when countries like Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Spain, they struggled. Though that is popularly known as 2011 Eurozone Crisis or PIGS country, PIIGS, PIGS country, Portugal, Ireland, Italy, Greece and Spain. So southern European countries struggled with huge amount of sovereign debt. Sovereign debt means debt on the government, debt on the country, not on any individual or any corporation. So here the most important concept to understand that monetary policy and fiscal policy cannot go haywire. They should be in tandem. Now if we same analyze this concept towards our country, in India what happened? Fiscal stimulus came late. One example, in 2019 when automobile sector was struggling, there were no demand for automobile sector. Now you know that I don't think so that's a like mistake of government. That was a mistake of automobile sector as well. When you are shifting from Bharat stage 4 norms to 6, it means you should not make that much of vehicles or the car do not manufacture where the demand will be low, because it will be like violating environmental norms. So there were low demands. So that is why people were waiting that we will buy a car in April 2020, because with the new norms, new environmental standard. Because if suppose I buy a car of 5-6 lakh rupees and in just 10 years norms have been changed, norms will change. So what I will do? I have to change something and it's a loss of money. So people will wait, people will do not buy a car. Again, automobile sector struggle. What government did? Government cut the corporate income tax. So which was what we call revenue foregone. When we cut the tax, it means the revenue that was expected to come will not come. That is what we call revenue foregone or tax expenditure. Tax expenditure means that by giving the incentive, we have certain kind of expenditure, but here expenditure is indirect. It means we'll not get that money. So at that time, revenue foregone was 1.45 lakh crore. Now instead of giving the tax break, because corporates were very skeptical in investing money into the Indian economy. Since I also teach in UPSC classes in Delhi, I have been saying since 2016 that in India private investment is very low. Why? The major reason is that policy predictability is missing in government's policy. Government can do anything, like suddenly they announce a demonetization, in hurry they have implemented GST. So I'm not criticizing it, but at least for the investor's point of view, you need a good roadmap so they can predict their policy and they can invest billions of dollars. Again, the issue is I'm not anti-national, but I'm just thinking from the perspective of the investor. Think from the Chinese company's perspective. They've invested huge amount of money like MI phone and other things. But what happened? Due to obviously national security reasons, we had to do that. But other things, we have just flipped the policy. Like in 2014, when we were saying make in India, and later on what we did is just reverse that policy. Getting my point? So here we are not creating free market where corporates can fill in, because in India we have fiscal constraint. As I told you earlier, we have announced 10% of GDP's Atmanirbhar Bharat package. But here the issue is that 10% of Atmanirbhar Bharat package will not be come at one go, because we do not have that funds. I hope you can understand. Your expenditure is high and your revenue goes down. And further, just because tax are not coming in, tax revenue not coming in, and expenditure is going further up and up. So obviously there's a deficit. The issue of fiscal deficit comes in. Now fiscal deficit is an indicator where we can think about the borrowing given by or taken by the government. Now fiscal deficit is the indicator how much government borrows. Now if you think about Indian economy according to the FRBM Act, you must have heard about it, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act 2003, and the review committee in 2016 under N.K. Singh suggested that the perfect figure for fiscal deficit is 3%. Although there is no perfect, but for Indian economy being a developing in nature, we can invest way beyond our income, because we have to earn that money into future. And right now we are having demographic dividend. If we will not invest now, the demographic dividend will become burden, because you have to take care of those people as well, those who are not skilled. So that's the responsibility of the government. So here again the question comes into the picture that government is having fiscal constraint. Now the only option that we have is multilateral institutions or foreign investment, foreign capital. Now for the multilateral institution, we had borrowed some of the amount of money from Asian Development Bank, gave the amount, World Bank gave the amount. India is looking for Asia's Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, which was established by China 4 or 5 years back. So we are also looking for the funds from there. Now if the funds will come, because India is a growing economy, India is having like a nature where we have like a lot of expansion that we can do, like being a developing country. Like here I can see a few international students, my international students are also there. So if you think about any developing country, the main thing is The expansion, the limit of expansion is way too high. It means you can stretch a lot. So here I think what we need is the need of the hour in fiscal policy is the amount of capital that we require. And the amount of capital will not come from in or from within the country. You have to take capital from abroad. And it's better use others' money to grow our economy. I think it's no bad idea. But here the issue is like people are making issue about the foreign capital and other things. So that is what we can say, the fiscal and monetary policy should go hand in hand. I think the monetary policy came first, and that was, I can say, government committed a mistake. Then they are like filling up with the Atmanirbhar Bharat package. Now it is relatively in tandem where RBI's monetary policy is like taking a back seat and fiscal policy is coming up. Because this is the only option. If you read the history, why, like when I teach economics, I always say that you should have good knowledge of history. Without reading history of economic thought, you cannot understand the economy. You cannot understand the money. So it's better to read history of economic thought, because once you understand that how mercantilism, I hope you heard about mercantilism, the ideology is to promote exports and restrict imports. Okay, now here we are moving monetary and fiscal policy with international trade. Now here, if we think about mercantilism, what mercantilism ideology said that you should promote export and restrict imports so that the amount of gold comes into the country which will be in surplus. So the country will become rich. But the here question is that it's a zero-sum game. It means suppose we are two people interacting or getting engaged into trade. If I will export more, it means you have to import more. And if I will have more gold, it means I am growing at the expense of the other country. So here the question of Adam Smith came into the picture. What he said that if you promote free trade, if you promote, it will be like a chance to grow together. It's a win-win situation for international trade. And I hope there are a lot of criticism in India about globalization, but still if you think about the Hirschmann unbalanced growth approach, what he said that first you have to create unbalance by investing heavily in some capital intensive sector where we have more return or capital investment. So later on the approach can be balanced. So again the same thing is that when Adam Smith came that we can grow together, and it is evident. I'll give you the small example. It is evident that since 1951, if you see the standard of living, the middle class, the rise of middle class in India, it is evident. Like I do not have data, you just see in the last 10 years how many people have car in 2010 and how many people are having car in 2020. How many people were traveling in AC coaches and train, how many people are now traveling. Or you can see the number of bogies that has been there like in the train. So it was like previously 2 to 3, now we have full trains with AC coaches. So this is how what we can think is that Indian middle class rise created a lot of benefit for the Indian economy. Although I personally agree that there are a lot of inequalities, poverty as there, but the question is at the initial stage, economy grows like this. If you see the growth of other developed country as well, although India is very unique, India shifted from agriculture to directly services by skipping the manufacturing sector. I'm not saying skipping, but not focusing on industrial sector, because industrial sector were under too much of protection, what I feel. So right now Make in India is a good opportunity because service sector cannot create that much of jobs. So again the question of manufacturing comes into the picture, because manufacturing sector is having the ability to generate the jobs. Now here if we talk about international level, at the international level if we think, it is very simple. International trade went down because of the global supply chain disruption. Again the issue is that India's exports were halted, imports were there, but imports mainly of oil, but due to oil prices sometimes it went to negative as well. It means people were selling oil in free. So because of excess supply, because we cannot stop the production of oil, we can slow it down. So here the question is that due to disruption in the international trade and the petrol prices. Now here the most important question, I think after food, the second most controversial topic in India is petrol prices. So for petrol prices, what you can do is government is having two options only, because as I said earlier that there was no point of increasing GST because no goods and services were selling, not about income tax. Here the question is two things that government had. What? The number one is the taxes on petrol, that is excise duty, which is still out of the ambit of goods and services tax. The second thing is the alcohol, tax on alcohol. Why? Because Alcohol gives taxes or excise duty the power of a state government to impose. So if I can say, I was reading some data in Delhi, if the alcohol cost around 1000 rupees, it was 700 to 800 rupees was the excise duty on that. So you can imagine 70 to 80% of taxes on alcohol, and the cost of production is approximately 50 to 60%, I guess. So here they were selling in like bulk. So what happened? Government got certain amount of revenue to spend into the economy. Again, the question is that government is having only two options: rising prices on petrol, where petrol international prices were going down. So it means that if petrol prices are rising, it means the amount of money that government is getting, that was increasing. So the question is that these two taxes are very low base. I hope you understand, in taxation we have base. Base means how many people contribute tax, or on how many people government impose tax. Like for example, out of 135 crore of population India is having, around 3 to 3.5% people pays income tax, which is very, very low. If you can imagine the luxury car that we are having in the people are having, is like approximately 8 to 9%. So you can imagine that there is some loopholes, especially in the tax base. So for example, the GST has increased the base of the indirect tax. We can have direct tax code as a reform in near future to reform the direct taxes in our economy. So this is what we can say about the fiscal aspect. Another issue on the international level is when government will increase the spending, it means government is stretching its fiscal deficit. Now currently the fiscal deficit in the last fiscal, what government reported, was around 3.3% and the target was 3.1%. But just after this coronavirus crisis, government said that we are not following the FRBM norms, and we obviously till now we haven't used the escape clause. Escape clause means we can stretch up to 50 basis point on both sides. Like for example, for any crisis, if the fiscal deficit target is 3, so then government can stretch in some unexceptional circumstances to 3.5% or sometimes 2.5%. It means a bracket given to the government. That's a flexible target given by N.K. Singh committee that was set up for review of FRBM Act in 2016. Okay. The question here is again that when we think about the fiscal deficit right now, according not the official figures but some of the expected figures, it was 3.8% 2 months ago. Right now it is approximately 4.5%. 4.5% fiscal deficit. Can you imagine? It will have big impact on India's borrowing, especially from abroad, because credit rating agency evaluate on the basis of fiscal discipline. If India is not fiscally disciplined, then India will not able to attract funds. One thing, India will not able to get funds at a cheaper rate. Cheaper rate means low interest rate. Like in the same example, if you consider about the individuals. Individuals go to bank will say, show me your history of the credit. If they will see that you are paying your EMI on time, you are able to repay your principal amount plus interest, then the bank will be readily give you loan very easily, and bank can give 80 to 90% of the amount that you are asking. But here the question is, if you are not paying your EMI on time, somewhere there's a history of default, etc. So you can imagine banks will be very reluctant and they will not give full amount. On the same lines, you can replicate the same thing at the global level, because India also works as the same, where we can think about individual. But the question is, as an economist, as a student, we cannot think from the macro perspective. We can think about micro perspective. So here one suggestion from my side: whenever you read economics, you make connections. Because what I do is, I do not read a lot, but I think a lot, because I make connections. So that is where I would like to address all these students in the last 10 minutes, because the allotted time till 11. So what we can think is, for the students, because I generally I got the information that there are majority of the population attending here is consist of student community or the research associate. So I would like to say, because I'm running a platform which is there to promote economics education, and we are opening one Ecoholics Center for Policy Research, another not-for-profit organization, where students will run that and students will work on research. We will publish this the magazine. Alongside, you will get chance to interact with major economists, as Ranni told you in the beginning, because when I have connections, so why not use it for all of you? So it's better to get the opportunity. in India, what I feel when I was teaching in some of the universities or taking guest lecture, then the problem is about the exposure. Everyone has talent, even in rural areas, urban areas, people understand, but there is like guidance is missing. So the main thing is here, whenever you are reading economics, like for example, one example I always give, but this is a very solid example. So I hope some of the students attending this session and other session, my YouTube live session also, they have attended some of the repetition for them, but it's very, very important to understand. Like if you think about school of thought as a timeline, starting from 1776 to 2020, okay, because the question is, we can criticize the first 5-year plan, we can criticize the second 5-year plan, but do you have solution for coronavirus problem? The answer is no. No one is having the solution. Like since I have conducted lot of interview with leading economists, around 20-25 interviews, you will find, but I was not able to get a single answer, solution for the coronavirus, because no one knows, not even Prime Minister, their advisor, the policymakers, bureaucrats, economists, no one knows. Everything is like going in like a dark. We don't know where the light will come again. So the question is, whenever you read economics, because economics is a subject of future, but in order to predict future, you should have good knowledge of history. Without good knowledge of history, you cannot predict future. You will just follow the future. For example, we all are students, we all are working towards bettering our country, living standards and everything. That is my main aim. The main thing is, like, if we think about the solutions, if we think about the 21st century, our mind belongs to industrial age, and currently we are living in information age. So age change ho gaya hai. It's like we have changed the age on calendar, but on our mind we are still living in industrial age. That started in 1760, and I think that ended in 1990s, because when IT started, the information age came to the picture. I know that this is the opportunity for all of you as well. If you learn data science, machine learning, AI, these are the things of the future. If you learn today, you will get advantage, because first come, first serve is the basis when we have disruptions. And COVID is the opportunity for all of us, for all the students, to make our life better. Because the most positive part of COVID is we understand the importance of sanitation. I know in Kerala, the health and education is very good. But I visited Kerala as well, Trivandrum and other places. I've seen personally hygiene, education, everything is perfect. But I generally live in northern part of the country like Delhi and my hometown in Bhopal. So what I feel is, like in the northern part, sanitation and that other thing were not very taken as seriously. So issue is, now after COVID, the biggest positive is we understand the importance of sanitation. We understand the importance of washing our hands. So this is how the new things come in. Okay. Now, if you think about economics, what I was saying, if you start with mercantilism, mercantilism was restricting the imports. But classical, Adam Smith came, Ricardo came, J.S. Mill and other, they said that open the economy. You can see this is totally opposite. But what happened when Keynes came into the picture in 1930s? Because in 1929, there was a Great Depression. And in Great Depression, the advisory committee to the US President Herbert Hoover was led by A.C. Pigou. And what A.C. Pigou suggested, that supply creates its own demand, their classical notion. And what he said, that you do not do anything, market will correct itself. But what happened? From 1929 to 1933, market failed to correct the situation of the economy. So what happened? He lost the election and Franklin Roosevelt came into the power. And then Keynes gave his model in the year 1936, although he gave earlier, book published in 1936. But what he said, that government intervention is must. When no one will come, no one will take the first step, government has to come. Like for example, 2011 World Cup, when India was struggling, MS Dhoni, the captain, came into the picture. I hope you understand. Who is the captain here? Captain of the ship has to take control. If he will not take, then what is the matter? How he is captain? So that is the main thing, that government has to intervene. Now can you understand? First restriction, then again free market, but free market like was going in no direction. American economy was flourishing in 1919 after First World War to 1929. And what American people were thinking, that this expansion will always go on. And if you read the basic economics, business cycle sometimes goes up, goes down. But it depends how much at higher point you can keep the economy, or how short is the point, the low point that you can make. So that is what we can think is about the economy. Now again, after Keynesian economics or Keynesian thinking, what happened? If you think about very, very carefully, that Keynes model failed in 1973. There were Bretton Woods system, I'm not going into it because of shortage of time. Bretton Woods system failed in 1974. What happened Bretton Woods system? It means in the Bretton Woods system, there was a scenario where dollar was pegged at gold. But due to some other conditions, not economic, the conditions in Vietnam War, the condition of oil crisis, these are the two things. Why? Because dollar experienced inflation, and they were saying that we cannot peg dollar at $35 per ounce of gold. So we had to dismantle this system. They have dismantled this system and they have printed n number of dollars. Since then, if you imagine the amount of inflation dollar has been facing. So again, when you print a lot of currency, it means the RBI's expansionary monetary policy, deficit the financing. So again, what happened is too much supply in the market. Keynesian economy failed. Like aggregate demand was not going up. If government spent a lot, inflation was going up. So policymakers were thinking like, what happened now? Now what to do? This is a new problem. Because in economics, you will find every time new problem. If you read theory, that was the problem of the past. If you try to implement the theory, क्या हो गया क्या ना? Yeah. So here, can you see me properly? Ranjini, please respond. Okay. Everything is perfect? Yeah. Okay. So what I was saying that in 1974, there was a new problem. The problem was stagflation. So what people were thinking that there's economic crisis, apply Keynes model blindfoldedly. So they were just relying on Keynes. But what happened when they spent more, inflation went up, not the aggregate output or the employment. Then we realized that this is a new problem, what we call stagflation. It means economy is stagnant, but inflation is going up. This is a hybrid word, stagflation. Okay, so the problem sometimes comes new. Then the economists like new classical rational expectation, Robert Lucas came into the picture. We hardly study these kind of theories in our school life because our textbook stops around Keynes and later on to monetarist. Beyond Milton Friedman, we do not study. And let me tell you, beyond Milton Friedman is the real economics to understand in the 21st century. If you do not read Robert Lucas, you do not read the George Akerlof theory, 2001 Nobel Prize winner on the lemon market about the information and misinformation. If you do not read, like I was having a conversation with Nobel Prize winner from India, Dr. Abhijit Banerjee, and most probably he will come on Ecoholics for a talk, for a conversation. When I was talking about behavioral economics and other things, the issue is that we need to think from the perspective of the student and we have to make trends. Now if you make trends, what will happen? You will understand how economy fluctuates. So when we understand the trends, then you will understand the real economics. It doesn't mean that if you know the Herod-Domer model, you can solve the equation, it doesn't matter. It will only help you in passing the examination. But if you want to understand the real life economics, I think the most important is to make connections. We all study correlation in statistics, but we hardly apply. We all study demand and supply, but we hardly apply in our daily life. Like suppose for example, 1 minute more, if you like there are two friends, suppose me and my another friend. If I'll go one day, he will give me, like he will offer me lunch, he will offer me some snacks, he will offer me some sweets, full family will give me attention. On the next day I will go again. What will happen? They will give less attention, sometimes snacks, water, etc. I'll go third day again. What will happen? He will say that take out the water bottle in the fridge and you can drink the water. On the fourth day, he will say that my mom is sleeping, so we'll go upstairs and we can sit in balcony, he'll attend the call, daily life will do. So I hope, and then the next day, he will not offer water. I have to take it from my own, like on my own. So what is the scenario is here too much of supply and low demand. So on your friend's house, there's low demand. So I hope you understand this is a demand and supply concept which you need to understand. If you are reading too much, it means you are not analyzing too much. So it's reading. So in Hindi we call padhe likhe log, but right now I think we do not have, we just likhe, we do not padhe. And so the issue is that we need to read and we need to think. That is from my side, and I would like to again very thankful to the college department, head of the department and the principal ma'am and other organizing committee, because I know there's a lot of effort in conducting webinar, making small things. A lot of students helped you a lot, Ranjini, in this webinar. So here I'm very thankful to all of you to conduct this. That's it from my side, Ranjini. Over to you. Yeah. Yeah. Currently 63 are attending the session. So there are a lot of questions, but I think you select some of them, and I think within the time limit we can, yeah. Yes. Sure. Yes, I can see the questions. Like there are a lot of comments, but I don't think so. There are a lot of questions in the comment section. So those, yeah, you can continue with the Google Meet first, then we can think. Yeah. Yes. See, what I think here is that government was not ready for the pandemic. You can see the same thing happened during demonetization as well. On every day, objective has been changed from countering black money to digital India to other things. So here in COVID as well, they first imposed one-day curfew, Janta curfew. Then they thought that lockdown will work. But lockdown worked, but government was not very active during lockdown. What government had to do that time? Like rapid testing. So to answer this question simply, directly, that the package has been announced, but you cannot imagine this 2 lakh crore rupees in cash. Okay, this is like a value creation. This is not what we think that 2 lakh crore spent in the economy. This is not how it works. It's like in incentive in some sector government will invest from the capital perspective. Like for example, we all struggle from the pay cut and other things. Okay, but here the issue is we have certain savings. For that we are able to survive this pandemic. On the same line, government was not having that much. All the government is having foreign exchange reserves. But I don't know the ground level situation because I do not conduct survey personally. What I have the knowledge is by reading newspaper and connecting the issues and by observing the economy what happened. So I think to answer this question answering is not very easy, but a stimulus package has been announced. Government is getting loan from the abroad, but I don't know how much they are, like it's trickling down to the states and the district level. So I think the approach should be bottom up, not the top down. That is what I can say. Yeah. Yes. It will affect, and since Trump came into the power, what we can say, the move towards deglobalization, and which is very harmful for country like India and China, you can say. And here India and China are on the same page. So I think we'll be able to control this problem of deglobalization. The question is here very simple, that if you could think that deglobalization will create the problem, but for India's perspective, globalization is the advantage for our country. If we do not get foreign funds, as I explained in the lecture, we're not able to grow, because we do not have internal funds to generate. We do not have broad tax base, we do not have system, like infrastructure is not there. So I think we need foreign funds, and especially the privatization of all the government entities, not all the government, but most of the inefficient. Like people ask me a lot of times, like why Air India, government is selling Air India, government is selling BSNL. Why? These are the assets of the government. These are not assets. Suppose you open a shop and every month you are getting 10,000 rupees revenue, but your rent is 20,000 rupees. Will you be able to sustain? In 1 or 2 months you will shut down the shop. On the same lines, every year government is influxing 4,000 crore rupees in Air India just for giving salaries, operations, petrol and salary, not capital investment, not buying flights and other things. So you can imagine these are not assets, these are liabilities on the taxpayers' money. So I think as soon as possible we have to sell this. Yeah, very, very important, very correctly said. I think agriculture is the only sector by which we are able to survive right now. And if you are having money and you don't have food, then you cannot eat money. So I seriously salute to all the farmers and the people engaged in the like supply chain of agriculture. But I think this is a good opportunity for the agriculture to grow. And what we can do is right now capital investment. Do not give subsidies. Subsidies are like lollipops. So they just look good, but they are inherently very, very bad. If you do capital investment, how much subsidy we provide, agriculture will flourish on its own. Agriculture is the most restricted market in India when we talk about free economy. So I think it's a good opportunity, and agriculture achieved 4.5% growth rate. I was talking to Professor Ramesh Chand, he's like agriculture economist and the member Niti Aayog. He also said that the same thing, that COVID provided opportunity for agriculture. And I think what we have decided in 2000 new agriculture policy to achieve the 4% growth rate, in this COVID we can achieve at the like last year. This is 2020 is the last year for that scheme. Yeah. I think the debt monetization is on cards, but I think since 1997 India has not used that methodology. Only thing that government can issue first, that government bonds. If government bond will not find their buyer, then government can print money, because that bond will be bought by, or will RBI will buy those bonds. So here the question is that if government will issue bonds, if we are not able to find a buyer, then obviously there's a chance of monetization of debt. So government is trying to sell their bond as soon as possible, but if not, then monetization is on cards, I think. Yes. Okay. See, there are two concepts. As you mentioned, the word quantitative easing. In quantitative easing, what we do is we generally issue the cheap money on the basis of the strength of the balance sheet of the central bank. I know it's too technical, but it depends on the strength of the RBI, and RBI is one of the highly capitalized central bank in the world, which is having 8 lakh crore as the base, surplus base. So like last year 1.76 lakh crore they've transferred to government. Okay, so that was not a bad move, but what I can think is that RBI is most highly capitalized central bank in the world. We can do that, but here quantitative easing is like more aggressive. I think it's better to adopt the operation twist policy. I hope you must have heard about the word operation twist. Operation twist is when RBI engages in short-term buying and selling of government bonds. That is what we call operation twist. So this is, I think, on cards, but it's beyond operation twist than the need of quantitative easing comes into the picture. But right now, I think Operation Twist is the beneficial for our country. I think the most hit sector is the hospitality, and I think after that real estate will rise for sure, because we need homes. Housing for all and other things schemes are going on, so housing will go up once we will have all the migrant workers back to the city. But to make sure, we need to provide the facility in urban areas, because if you think personally, psychologically of a worker, where, because I had a conversation with around hundreds of workers, daily wage workers, what I understand from their psychology is when they go to urban areas, they see a lot of opportunities. They are very optimistic that we'll go to urban areas, we'll work, we'll earn money, and we'll send back to the rural areas where people will like dependent on their income. But what happened when the reverse migration happened from urban to rural? They are very disappointed. They will not come again until and unless government will make sure their livelihood. So to answer this question, real estate sector will go up, but it depends on the supply of migrant laborers. The second issue is, like in rural areas we have Manrega. We need to replicate a scheme like Manrega in urban areas as well, because the issue of rural poverty is there, but the issue of urban poverty is very, very worse. People living in slums and streets, I have seen in Delhi, in central Delhi, like Karol Bagh area, people are sleeping just below the metro. So the issue is very grim, but I think it depends on the supply of migrant labor. Real estate sector will go up, because that is why the name is real. So gold and property, if they will not grow, then what will grow? Not the paper assets. Yes, Ranji. Yes, privatization is good. Just one word, because government sector is inefficient. Like, I will not promote privatization in ONGC. ONGC is working well. Then why should we privatize ONGC? Because it will generate dividend for the government, and government, that money can invest in the economy. So that is creating multiplier effect in the positive way. But here, if we think about other PSUs struggling, like Air India, they were finding the buyer Indigo, but now Indigo is also not interested. Like, it's like going back to the circle, Tata again. So I think if you will not sell Air India as soon as possible, we will not able to find buyer. So it's better to sell in a good condition rather than like fast selling of the assets, because that leads to undervaluation. Yeah. It will not affect the Chinese investment. See, one positive thing about India is we have market. So if we like push back them, they will come again twice. But I think they will remember this after 50 years later also. Then we will not have that much of market, and then if in future we will struggle, they will remember that we remember in 2020 what happened. So I think the border issue is a separate issue, and we should not like integrate with the economic issue. It is like failed dialogue that you are having about the border issue. This is not the lecture of internal security, but if it is, like, I would have explained about the border issue that India is having. Except for Pakistan, we do not have a good border. Like in China, if you go to Ladakh, I personally visited Pangong Lake. There are issues related to the border, because we do not have demarcated line. When you do not have demarcated line, then obviously there will be issue. There is an issue in the neighborhood as well. Like if you see at your place also, in nearby areas, if you park your car beyond your limited area, then obviously there is an issue. So the same thing happened in the international borders as well. I think this is the whole lecture. Yeah. Huh. Yeah. Yes. Throwing light means it's like 15-20 minutes, but in short, since you have asked me, like for the YouTube, for the viewers who are watching on YouTube, they are saying that they are not able to hear the question. So I'll speak in short. What is the question? So comparing the traditional monetary with the modern monetary theory. In modern monetary theory, we do not trust more on the classical economist. Okay, what supply creates its own demand. That was the major bedrock of founding the monetarist theory by Milton Friedman. So the modern theory generally differentiate with this, the same thing. They do not totally rely on the supply side. They rely on both, but more supply side intervention. This is a modern monetary. Yes, Ranjini, you can ask next one. See, India needs UBI, but I think government is not ready for UBI. I told you why, because we have fiscal constraints. So we cannot just give money to the hands of the people. The here issue is that if we have money, it's better to build some capacity so that people can generate the income. This is what the first chapter of economic survey of 2019-20 said, the wealth creation. So if until and unless the government will not understand the value of wealth creation that we have seen in the examples of South Korea development, Singapore development, people generally say, why India compare with Singapore? It's a small country, India is a very large country. But I would say to those people, can you make Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai or Kolkata somewhere near with Singapore? The answer is obviously Chennai also struggle with flood, Mumbai also struggle with flood, Delhi with pollution, smog, etc. Generally, I do not prefer living in Delhi in winters. So that is the issue. So people are there. Since I'm working in the IT sector or the online sector, I can operate from anywhere. But it's a struggle for the people living there. So the answer to the question is, we can say that we can do that, but I think it's a struggling time, and what government can take is, I think, no UBI. Yeah, I think it's a kind of reverse migration. So what we need is, like, those people who are not able to find the work abroad, they can come back to India, but it's a responsibility of the government to make policy. I'm not saying it's a responsibility of the government to provide job, but it's a responsibility of the government to create environment or ecosystem, what we call, so that private investment will come and these people can be accommodated. So this is the answer. Yeah. Sorry. Can you please repeat? Data collection. Okay. Data collection. Oh yeah. So for the YouTubers, the question is about the data collection in India is a big issue. Okay. So to answer this question, recently, I saw a post of Professor Ravi Shankar Prasad, minister, cabinet minister, posted one photo or a video, I don't remember, where they are creating one data center where all the data will be available for the researcher. I know a lot of research scholars find it very difficult to do research on the data. Generally, we find very fluctuating data. For some year data is missing, for the other year the latest would be 2015-16 and we are in 2020, so it's very difficult. And conducting primary survey for the researcher at a very initial level is obviously no possibility because shortage of funds, etc., even if you are JRF. So here the question is that government is doing something, and there was a chapter in economic survey last year about the data. Data is a new oil. If you not have data, you're not able to predict future. Again, the same thing. So here the question is, it's government's responsibility because government is having agencies like CSO and SSO. And other agencies like Acer, when I was having a conversation with Dr. Viral Acharya, he is the part of Pratham UK. I hope you heard about Pratham NGO, works for pre-primary education. So the question is here that Acer report is a very beautifully carved out report by the not-for-profit organizations. So I think these are the things in India we require, not-for-profit and the government. Two things can provide. So on the lines we are also planning at Ecoholics, from the 1st September we are launching Center for Policy Research, where students can participate. This is all for students. They can write, they can read, they can be the part of editorial board, they can publish paper. One economist, leading economist, will publish their article or the interview, whatever this is. So it's an opportunity for all the students. Yeah. Yeah. So the question is about blockchain technology as the part of the solution. I think blockchain technology is a part of the solution, but I think right now blockchain works in different directions, not just if we talk about the bitcoins or other currencies. But right now people do not trust the normal legal tender as well. Like if you understand the concept of giffen goods, what giffen goods is telling, that when price goes up, people demand more. It's like violation of law of demand. So the issue here is that people are buying gold when gold prices are rising, just because they know that maybe the question comes of deficit financing or monetization of deficit will come. So they should have safety to their assets. So I think answer to the question is simple, that monetization of debt and other things will work in country's favor. But I think it is looking difficult right now. Okay, some of the questions are on YouTube as well. Can you please arrange me? So if there are no questions on Google Meet, can you please take one or two which is relevant? Yeah. Okay. Okay, no issues. Okay. So here on YouTube I'll take one question is no labor protection laws and huge job loss. See, I think government is also struggling with the same thing. So labor protection is the important thing, but on the same lines there must be some protection to the employer as well. So like in UP, that was highly criticized, but I think labor laws and other things like insurance company, if you have medical insurance, they were saying that medical insurance not covered for pandemic, since they have announced COVID-19 as pandemic. So it means the amount of money you have spent by paying premium to the insurance company or health insurance, and at the time when you required money, they are not ready to give you. So these are the questions. I think for labor laws, what we can do is, because in India, 92% or 90% we can say population working in informal sector. So it's not a short-term solution, because if you are not prepared for future, then obviously, like if you're not planned for future, is like you're failing to plan or plan to fail. Like this one quote is very important, very famous. If you fail to plan, it means you're planning to fail. So that is what government has done in the past. Like since demonetization, we had the opportunity to convert informal sector into formal one, but we were not able to take that opportunity, and the opportunity lost. Now it's a new opportunity in COVID. If government can do with the new labor laws, like labor wage code bill, integrating around 160 labor laws into 4 code wage. So that if that will implement, that will protect the labor. Next is the question is, why can't we have capital from inside? Dr. Nidhi is asking, because finding capital inside is very difficult when you do not have wealth creation. It means, for example, if I will earn income, I will spend. It means this is the income of someone else. he will spend. So it's like a chain. If we do not utilize this chain, if we do not make this chain at upper level, then the question is simple, that it will not create a lot of demand. By creating wealth, I would say that it's beneficial for the people because buying and selling will go on a large scale. Another issue, very important, government will get tax because on every transaction there's a buying and purchase, government will tax. Government will get tax. So it is beneficial for both. So only thing I would suggest that you should start innovating, start giving opportunity to the private sector, that will create wealth and you will have a lot of opportunities. Now if you think from the perspective of like education, if you think about that, after a person is graduated, he's not ready for job, because I conduct every time around 60 to 70 interview per month. And when I see youth, because I personally have given around 50 interviews since my graduation, and I personally take all around 500 interviews of the Indian youth, what I found is one common problem. One common problem is, if they have knowledge, they do not have conceptual clarity. Other things, if they have knowledge, that is totally bookish. Like suppose I'm from Reliance or Tata or whatever you have, I will see that how helpful this person will be for my company. I will not see like he scored 80%, she scored 90%, doesn't matter. How useful they can be. So the question to the answer is that in order to generate capital from inside, we need to first generate wealth. When wealth will be generated, the government will also get the share, on other sectors will also get the share. So distribution aspect will correct. Next question is from mercantilism policy aim to reduce current account deficit to increase current account surplus. I think this is not a question. Okay, next one I'll see. So those who are saying thank you, it's my pleasure. I would say thank you for your time. So you have attended this long session. I think the next question is, country promised the central bank would maintain fixed exchange rate of their currency against the dollar under the Bretton Woods. Okay, I think it's very old. I think what I can think is, if people are saying that generally if we see reforms, what kind of reforms that has been taken. Generally 50% of the reforms all over the world, around 641 reform packages announced all over the world in 176 countries. This is the data of the World Bank, you can cross check as well. And 50% of that like cash transfers, and 25% were like giving food. 23% approximately were for financial relaxation, like paying EMI or moratorium on that. And the 2% is related to the direct involvement of the government. So you can see that cash transfer is a very, very popular scheme. So I think the question is that when we talk about the trade cycle, we expect that COVID will become very, very minimum. But the here question is, we don't know where we are. Like it's going down, but we don't know. Like we are going down, or we are at the bottom, or we are started rising. We don't know about it, where we are currently. Yeah, someone is asking, is there any negative impacts on COVID? I think it's 11:30 Ranjini. Shall I take one or two, or it's like wind up where I have to wind up? Okay. So is there any negative impacts on COVID? I think the only negative impact is what we can say is supply chain disruption. When we send money, because when we send crops from one place to another, these are perishables. If we do not have proper storage facility, then there is a loss. So I think the only impact to agriculture sector. Another is like now people will disguisedly employed in agriculture sector, because a lot of people from urban to rural, they are there. So the two problems in agriculture sector. Someone is asking feedback link in the YouTube as well. So Ranjini, if you can paste it later on. Yeah. I think all the questions two remain. What are the impacts of objectives of demonetization? And objectives were an economic blunder. I think the question is related to demonetization. So I personally think, although I think from the economics perspective, I do not support blindly to any government and do not oppose. Like this government has been doing great in infrastructure sector. They have done like very good things, especially if we talk about discoms, although currently they are not showing good signs. Another is a National Highway Authority of India, they are building roadways. So on these fronts government has been doing, but I consider personally demonetization as a blunder, totally blunder, and I do not refrain from calling that a blunder. But I think 99.4 or 5% currency came back to RBI, and it was, as far as I remember, it was 17.7 lakh crore was the currency in circulation and 15.3 lakh crore withdrawn. So 86% of the currency they have withdrawn. So can you imagine, after withdrawing this huge amount of liquidity from the market, the economy had to go down. So that was not, and the slowdown started since then. So COVID just like contributed towards the nosedive. Okay. Way forward for, someone is asking way forward for policy for manufacturing. I think it's 11/11, so the question is pretty old. Monetary manufacturing sector policy of way forward policy for monetary policy for manufacturing sector to stronger our export. I think it's too much of linkage. Monetary policy can support exports, especially in credit. Okay, so that is here you can get. I think Ranjini, I'm done with the questions on YouTube. And now you can proceed. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.